When I was about 10 to 12 years old, I remember my cousin and I had gotten our hands on a few pirated game setups. One of those games was Dark Souls 2, and even as a child I had heard loads about Souls franchise from channels like Watch Mojo. I remember being intrigued by the world and the lore of the Souls franchise, so I installed Dark Souls 2 with a spring in my step and I started playing it. But unfortunately, the mechanics were a bit too unconventional for my child brain, so after spending about an hour in it, I uninstalled the game and started playing the Assassin's Creed, and I was so taken in by that game that I completely forgot about Dark Souls 2. About 5 to 6 years later, I got the itch to dip my toes into the Souls franchise again. There was an insatiable hunger for a dark fantasy setting in me, and the Souls franchise was right up that alley. So this time I decided to start with Dark Souls, and I fell in love with the franchise. Everything from its environment, the combat, the music, and the lore completely immersed me into its world. I devoured Souls lore from any source possible. I watched hours and hours of video essays on each and every part of the game. And even now, I still return to this game constantly to once again set on the undead pilgrimage, to take my destiny into my own hands and bend the gods to my will. Playing any of the Souls game is a generational experience, but Dark Souls 1 holds a special place in my heart because it's the first Souls game that I played to completion. It is primitive compared to something like Elden Ring, but that also contributed to its charm because despite being rough around the edges and fucking frustrating in the second half, this game is revolutionary. This form of environmental and paradoxically archaeological storytelling combined with interesting and entertaining lore is one of the cornerstones of why the Souls games are as goated as they are. And for me, this all started from this very game. From this point forward, I'm issuing a full spoiler warning. You have been warned. Now, onto the good bits. The first half of this game is absolutely divine. It is such a connected and immersive experience going from the Firelink Shrine all the way to Anor Londo. The Firelink Shrine feels like home, a place where we can just sit at the bonfire and ponder our thoughts and process the bleakness of the world around. There aren't many things that can match the feeling of seeing Firelink Shrine pop up on your screen as you turn a corner or access a shortcut. The interconnectivity of the first half of the map, my god, it is so fucking amazing. Although I appreciate all of the NPCs present at the shrine, but the Firekeeper is probably my favorite because the mystique behind her occupation is intriguing to say the least, and the fact that she can't talk was strange. After ringing the second bell of awakening, we find ourselves back at the only place that offers us a warm respite from the indifference of Lordran, only to find that the bonfire is cold and the firekeeper is dead. I still remember the bubbling anger I felt towards Lothric. We freed that excrement looking knight only for him to slaughter an innocent. The satisfaction I felt when I pancaked Lothric was immeasurable and only matched by when I found out that I can revive the firekeeper. This also restores her speech and we find out that she is Anastasia of Astora. She doesn't have much dialogue, but she is also another victim of the curse befallen on Lordran. Another favorite of mine is Solaire, the Knight of Astora. He was a wild card of positivity in a world plagued with stagnation and despair. And that is exactly why most, if not all, people can't get enough of the sun, bro. His positivity is infectious and he bolsters a resolve of fulfilling this prophecy to end the undead curse, one way or another. Depending on your choices, even this beacon of positivity loses their light as Lordran takes its toll on them. Slowly but surely, he realized that his quest to find his son was pointless. There is nothing in this external world that can guarantee us a sanity, hope, or happiness. It falls to us to not lose hope and choose to keep the positives in our heart even when practically there are none. That is the only long term way to persevere. Unfortunately for us, a friend has been robbed of that opportunity to learn this crucial lesson. It's a sad state of affairs as we walk through Lost Izalith only to find our friend broken and manic, and we need to put him down for his own sake. Tragedy is a hallmark of the Souls games, and Siegmeyer was no exception. The pain of incompetence while the people around you keep progressing is real. You're stuck in a perpetual cycle of self-pity and hard work, but the problem lies in the self-pity mindset, as it clouds your judgment and your ability, as was the case with Siegmeyer. He wants to be a hero, but every time it's us who save him. Caught in this vicious cycle, Siegmeyer loses sight of what truly matters. In the end, only the embers of his ambition remained, forever unkindled, while his daughter will forever lament the loss of her hero. With so much tragedy around us, one would expect for this to get tedious at some point. But somehow, the world, the environment, and the general vibe of this game, along with the writing, almost, if not completely, mitigate that issue. I had heard so many horrific things about Blighttown and how it was going to be one of the most stressful gaming experiences. Turned out to be false, mostly because I played the Dark Souls Remastered, which doesn't have the frame rate issue that DS1 had. which made Blighttown nigh unplayable. So despite being a challenging area, Blighttown was quite an enjoyable experience. And a big part of that is Quelaag. And I don't mean the boss fight. The fight itself is okay, but it's the lore behind Quelaag that brought a tear to my eye. Because on the surface, Quelaag might just seem like Gunobait, but the more you delve into her lore and the environmental storytelling, you'll start appreciating her more and more. Quelaag is one of the daughters of the Witch of Izalith. All of them became victims of the Flames of Chaos. The Flames transformed Quelaag and another one of her sisters into a half-hybrid manifestation of order and chaos. All of Izalith fell into ruins. Quelaag and her sister escaped the city. Quelaag's sister was an especially kind soul. She would take on the pain of their followers, which led to her crippled state. Quelaag sought to help her sister, and the only way she knew how was to farm humanity for her sister to consume, which is why Quelaag attacks us on sight, believing us to be just some unfortunate undead. After discovering Quelaag's sister, or the Fair Lady, the whole encounter with Quelaag gets turned onto its head. It felt so fucking horrible after I found all of this out. Because the Fair Lady, you can only speak to her if you take the old witch's ring back at the start. So she believes you to be her sister. She is just so sweet and everything. It just makes you feel so horrible for everything you've done. Unknowably so, but still. I believe that Quelaag has some unfinished voice lines that were never implemented, which leads me to believe that at some point maybe she was an optional boss, or at the very least you could reason with her. I would have preferred that knowing what I know now. I wonder what a finished version of Dark Souls 1 would look like. The game that the team had envisioned in its totality. But we're never gonna get that, so it's pointless to think about. Besides, what we got is already pretty damn great considering the time constraints the developers had. New Londo is a very cool concept for a location, but for some reason I just don't vibe with it nowhere near as much as I thought I would. Although I still think that the Four Kings are cool as fuck. Now I'm gonna talk about my absolute favorite area in the game, Anor Londo. This entire section of the game is fucking amazing. Everything just works here. The environment's sexy, music banger, enemies awesome, and the main boss iconic. The entire section has that it factor of a Souls game in spades. Even the transition from Sense to Anor Londo rocks. I get goosebumps every time I watch that cutscene. The City of the Gods is a concept that is present in both of the Souls games that I've played, and it's been a banger both times. Anor Londo is also such a cool fucking name. It is also unfortunately funny if you know Hindi, but we move. This section is incredible at delivering the power of the gods. The whole of Lordran suffers as the first flame fades, but the gods above are untouched. Even a calamity of this scale is a mere footnote for the gods. Or is it? But before we jump onto that, we gotta talk about Ornstein and Smough. Not only are they one of my favorite bosses in this game, but the fact that this fight is so effective at communicating their personalities without a single word spoken by either of them. The psychotic Smough uses a big ass warhammer to squash stuff with heavy and slow attacks, all the while he laughs from under his humongous armor. Add the fact that his eyes are not where the armor's eyes are. This dude is so creepy. I love it. Then comes the honorable and noble knight Ornstein. He uses his spear for swift and precise attacks, and he moves about the battlefield with grace. Well, most of the time. And that he honors his fallen comrade Smough should he fall first, while Smough absorbs him the moment Ornstein goes down. Especially because we aren't sure if Ornstein was actually dead because his fingers were twitching microseconds before Smough pancaked him. God, I love this fight. Now onto the hypocrisy of the gods. You see, this entire time you would be thinking that despite it all, Anor Londo still stands as the seat of power for the gods, only to find out that all of it is an illusion made by Gwyndolin. Suddenly, everything makes sense. None of these fuckers were the true divinity they portrayed themselves as. All of them are just as feeble as the humans they condemn and ostracize. All of them plagued by the same anger, jealousy, ambition, pride, and on and on. God, I wish the second half of the base game was even half as good as this. Don't get me wrong, I still like the second half of the game, otherwise I wouldn't be hailing Dark Souls 1 as a great game. Now let's talk about the DLC. I love the very premise of this DLC, going back in time to see the dark root garden that was once Ulasil. I absolutely loved traversing the environment, not only because it was beautiful, but also because I loved spotting the areas which I recognized from Dark Root Garden. The lore additions in this DLC were on point, absolute bangers. It had the things I was most intrigued by in the base games that did not really have complete answers. Something like the Abyss, Night Artorias, and Humanity. So, to see all of these amazing mystique-filled plotlines converge to give me a generational experience was wild. The strongest point of this DLC are the bosses. Hands down, fucking loved fighting Artorias. Everything about that fight is absolutely perfect. His movements and his attacks really convey how far gone he is. His entire being consumed by the abyss, and all that is left is a mad dog. Artorias is so fucking badass, man. He left Lordran to help the people of Ulasil. He gave the protection of his shield to Sif so that she may have a chance to survive. And then he also broke his arm to hinder himself after he gets consumed by the abyss. The aura on this guy is insane. Manus is also a highlight of this game because his character design slaps and the lore behind him is infectious. I could not wait to find out more about him, and his boss fight is fucking crazy. I loved it, but I like it less than Artorias. His arena is also really cool. Fighting in the depths of the abyss was amazing. Another highlight of this DLC is Goff. He is practically blind, yet he shoots Calamite out of the air like it's nothing. His line before that never fails to give me chills. After being done with all of that, we arrive at the kiln of the first flame, ready to face the Lord of Cinders, to decide the fate of Lordran. The kiln is one of the best final areas I've ever seen. Right at the start, I was mesmerized by the souls of the Silver Knights passing through the veil, still serving their lord even in death. It looks so goddamn beautiful, and then you get to walk through the ash-ridden lands of where the once great first flame bloomed, expecting to come face to face with a god, but upon entering, all we find is the husk of a person who once held a lord's soul. So far gone that he can't even use the sunlight and lightning spells that he is known for. All that's left is an automaton that swings his sword around. Upon claiming victory, all that's left to do is to decide the fate of Lordran. The memories of the people we've met and lost along the way, the countless times we persevered over failures, remembering every time that we chose to get up after being knocked the fuck down no matter how hard it was. It was all up to us now. Every single time that I've come to this juncture, I've always chosen to just walk away, to not artificially prolong this false age of fire, to put an end to this sorry wave of stagnation. The first flame appeared when the world was ready for disparity. I believe that the world will get whatever it needs to evolve. To meddle in that process is a recipe for disaster, as we have seen throughout our journey. So I walk away, leaving the world in darkness, to find strength and disparity and hope in my heart that the world can once again progress without the crutches of an artificial age. Dark Souls 1 will always have a special place in my heart, and I'm sure I'll return to this game again and again throughout my life. Thank you for watching. See ya!